stove on the right was left out in the weather for 2 years as an experiment to see how well it handled being in the direct sun, wind, rain, snow, hail, lightning storms, whatever came our way. And it's been quite a wet and varied sort of weather pattern for the last couple of years. And I just left the stove there, just out in the weather, never touched it, never moved it. The left side, from your point of view, was toward the sun, if the sun was in the southern sky like in the winter time. The right side was closer to the house, so you can see that the oxidation of the paint took place more or less to a greater degree on the left. But comparing it to the stove on the left, which was not left out in the weather, you could see what happens. And it looks just like an old car whose paint has become oxidized. The oxidation rubs off. Nevertheless, the paint underneath is still faded to some degree over the paint on the stove that was not weathered. You can see that the metal liner has some rust on it. Let me zoom in for you. Okay, nice coating of rust in there. It is not by any means damaged in the sense of rusting through or anything. It's just coated with oxidation, just like the paint is. And then some of the screws, let me pan down for you, around the trim there have some rust on the heads of those screws, and the rack where it was exposed to the combustion process when used and then left out in the weather for 2 years. You can see, you wouldn't abuse yours like this. I did it as an experiment, but you can see that this stove is fully functional. It's really not that much worse for the wear, and all I really did was like an age accelerated study, right? Left it out in the weather, which I would not do in the real world, in real life, if I was dependent on it for survival. But it handled it, and so if I was to pretend I was just using it daily for survival and I was out in the elements only occasionally to cook with it, but more or less kept it sheltered when not in use, it would last me a lifetime. The top, which had been seasoned by the use of organic shortening, which is palm oil, and also just cooked on several times so that there was a good layer of soot, if you will, carbon deposit, very little rust. 2 years in the weather, quite remarkable how rust resistant that seasoned cast iron was, even though it just sat there for 2 years. You can see bits of rust here and there, but very little. And so I'm fairly impressed with how weather resistant these stoves really are. That was my age acceleration study of leaving a StoveTec Rocket Stove out in the weather for 2 continuous years.